Welcome to AMCI Testing and our YouTube channel. I'm Guy Mongemeli, Director of AMCI Testing. I'm here today with Gary Thomason, our lead test driver, multiple-time SCCA National Championship winner, so he's got lots of great things to say about all the topics we're going to talk about today, and you can probably tell from what's behind us, today's topic is the 2020 GR Supra. If you're not new to our channel, you may have seen we dropped 4 other videos about our recent track test of the GR Supra versus the 2019 BMW M2 Competition and 2019 Porsche 718 Cayman. We tested those cars at Streets of Willow Springs as well as at our test facility at El Toro, just in Orange County, California, our home base. And although we had lots of really interesting things to say about the performance and handling of those cars in those 4 long-form videos, there's a lot more to say, especially if you're, sports car geeks kind of like we are, and want to know all the details, a lot of behind-the-scenes things that we couldn't talk about in those first videos that we're going to hopefully handle today. So to start off, I thought I would ask Gary a couple of just initial impressions about the cars when he got into them. Because they're all 3 so special.
The Supra's all new, and
right.
We had it very early, before anybody really had access to it, or at least very close to that. And the big thing was the size and shape of the car, and then looking it over, sitting in it and how BMW is this, and
a lot has been made of that, which I think personally is a bit overblown.
And the Cayman we had experience with before, so there wasn't anything much new there. But the Supra was the star, and the M2 we had driven before, but not the competition. So that was the 19 car was new to us. Back to the Supra, the first thing I did, just because I'm a racer, was get under it and look at the front and rear sway bar diameters and say, well, this is looking kind of small in the front here compared to the rear.
This isn't going to work.
Or I was a little bit. I said, well, it's going to be neutral, that's for sure.
Right. So that right up.
And that's turned out to be true. So, but that's the biggest thing about the Supra, really, that stood out was the agility, the neutrality, the lack of understeer. That's the kind of the big thing that stands out in the Supra.
It actually takes some courage to make it that way. I mean, in today's market, it's not the setup that you would probably most expect.
Well, stability controls have gotten so good that as long as you have them on, you don't have to really worry about maybe getting a little over enthusiastic and driving it off the road backwards. So that gives you some margin there. And the stability controls on all these cars were very good. Now, we don't do testing with stability controls on, although in this particular case we actually did test on and off just because we wanted to compare the stability systems. That wasn't shown in our videos because Toyota and us, we basically decided that this is a performance handling test. Stability controls get in the way of that.
Right. In general,
we're at a racetrack and we're doing handling tests, so let's just concentrate on those results. Right. Stability control masks the actual handling of the car. Depending how well done it is, if the car handles really well, it's not likely to come on much, unless you're really ham-fisted. But if the car is a big understeer, stability control struggles to compensate for understeer. It's a little bit hard to do that. Oversteer is easy to compensate for with diagonal braking or intelligent use of the braking system, and then cutting power, taking it away from you so you're less likely to get even looser. But at any rate, these were all very good. And if something, the Cayman, with the stability system on, it was almost hard to tell. Because, in fact, that was true. Getting back to things we didn't show in the video, our results were actually astoundingly close on and off for every one of these cars. So, very good, very, very advanced, impressive stability systems.
Everybody's upping their game quite a bit
absolutely.
in that
and
arena.
That's a trend we've noticed over the years. We've been doing this a long time. Stability control systems have been out forever. They used to be awful, but like most things that are new, But everybody's learned, and I think this test stands out as one where We had the most absolute ties, even on the track. We had, as long as the cars were driven smoothly, we had lap times on the track that were virtually the same. Now, it depends. We had more cars in the attest initially than what we showed in the videos.
Right.
So we had some cars in that group that were quite slow with the stability system on. So one of them was named F-type. So, but,
That's right. There were some that were more difficult.
Right, right.
So if we're going to cover off on handling and braking, I think I should probably hand off to George Deganis, our manager of testing operations. George?
Thanks, Guy. Yeah, Gary, well, let's talk about it. Actually, let's cover some of the most fun things we found out the moment we saw the car. What are the two things we saw right away?
Well, being a racer type, first thing you walk up, you can see there's a little bit of negative camber on the front. That's a clue. That's a clue. And then, like I said, being a racer type, and some things I had read, I decided to look at the anti-sway bars sizes front to rear. First thing, crawl under there, and the first thing, look at the front, go back and look at the rear, and see what how they compare in size, because there's a normal relationship, kind of sort of normal relationship between those sizes in a front engine car.
Front rear wheel drive.
Right, with front engine rear wheel drive. So that's the first thing I looked at. Took a look at this, went back, looked at that, and said, that's too small.
Yes, that was our initial reaction.
Right.
Now we thought based on that it would do what? Oversteer.
Oversteer.
Yeah.
Right.
But we were not correct.
Right. So there's other things that come into play.
That's
Spring
right.
rates have a huge effect. So, but that was the initial reaction.
Yeah, that was the initial reaction. The main thing, this car drove differently than what we expected based on what we first saw.
Right.
And the key to that is the electronic limited slip differential that exists on the rear axle. The programming of it makes it do things that are not expected, right?
Right.
Let's talk about our cornering test.
Yeah, our cornering test is not a skid pad.
Right.
It's a 180-degree corner. The course is very narrow, so there's not much line choice to take. It's only 12 feet wide.
Yep.
And I'm talking about the center of the cone to center of the cone, so it's actually narrower than 12 feet.
Right.
So, and that's purposeful, but that still allows a line a little bit of a line to come into play. So we're unlike a skid pad, we're capturing corner entry, steady state cornering in the middle, which is similar to a skid pad, and then an exit phase. So all three phases of handling in a corner.
That's right.
And that's more realistic in our opinion because it simulates, say, a freeway or a highway on-ramp or off-ramp.
That's right.
So whereas skid pad is very unrealistic in general. So what we noticed on this car is and in the M2 is the electronic limited slip differential changes the way it behaves and in our corner entry and in the middle and in the exit. So you have to take that into account. And so initially in this car and that's very normal. You come in and there's if your entry speed is too ambitious, a little high, you have to figure out how fast you can come in. This car has a lot of grip, so coming in fast. So in this car, for instance, 55 miles an hour is the entry to that corner.
Right.
Roughly that. And you find the limit by going in, and when does it start to rotate too much, and you have to correct, or it pushes off if it's a car that wants to understeer. So what we found in this car, after learning to get along with that limited slip, which is a little bit of a learning process, but it wasn't hard. But it was a little I want to say, different than you're used to. And I own a car with an electronic limited slip, and it does things that you're not expecting. And this is no exception. But once you learn the language, it's a different deal. What we learned is that it's going to start to rotate. Go to the throttle, go to maybe 25% throttle, and all of a sudden it puts in some lock in the limited slip, and that gets rid of the oversteer.
That's right.
As long as you don't overdo it.
Exactly. So, the key is here not to overdo it.
Not to overdo it. And so all of a sudden the oversteer I was getting at the higher entry speed, 57 miles an hour, became fine. Where if I didn't go to the throttle, it would try to spin off.
Yep.
Or just at least get the tail out where it's getting the back of the car into the cones.
That's right.
So that brought the times around our event. We time it and then convert it to a G figure. But that brought the times down a lot. So this is, we got 1.17 G as an average around our cornering course, and that's actually a
Very high number.
Very high number.
Yeah, the M2 was also very good.
Yes.
But the M2 has totally different beast.
Complete different animal. You know, a longer wheelbase, which makes it more stable, which doesn't come in too much play in a corner, and also an electronic limited slip. But the M2 has a little bit of understeer, so it wants to naturally kind of push off a little bit if you're not careful.
Right.
But again, what you're doing with the throttle, which is important in all cars, but exactly what you're doing was different in this car. You don't want to add more understeer, which is what we did in this car, because it was naturally trying to get the tail out. So in this car, you know, going to it, tightened it up and tightened its line and made it work. And then, you know, once you're in the middle, you could start to accelerate, and then you get near the end and just go as much power as you can put in.
Yeah.
With the M2, things were different. It wants to understeer. So you had to, again, find the sweet spot with the limited slip to make it neutral, which was a different language in this car, even though it's probably a very similar limited slip. And the other big thing with the M2 is that there's a lot of power that sometimes comes in, and this car's got it too.
Yes,
but
the boost
sometimes comes in somewhat abruptly, and you have to watch power oversteer.
Correct.
So
Exactly.
that was something you had to manage in the
So
M2.
the moral of the story is, whether you have an M2 or a Supra, it takes a little bit of time to learn how to work with the electronic limited slip.
Right.
It does more things than you expect.
Right.
So just give it time.
And all three cars, the Cayman, the M2, and the Supra, had excellent numbers, but this was the best car.
Here we have three cars with very different personalities. And, you know, we'll start with the Supra. What stood out in your mind?
First thing we noticed was the car's a rocket ship in a straight line, particularly given its ratings. And right away, the launch, you know, car hooks up. So our 0 to 10s, starting at 0.
Not like a magazine starts at 3, 4, 5.
Right, starting at 0. We're very good. In fact, shockingly so. The car hooks up. It's got some big wheels and tires in the back, and it squats. So it puts power down, and that was the big thing. It's geared short in first gear. The torque converter allows for a kind of a soft launch, a soft tip-in to keep the wheel spin from getting out of hand. And if you get it just right, we found in this car that we didn't use launch control. It was better to just drive it out.
You mean you were better?
I don't mean that at all, but at any rate, you know, with experience and trying different methods to get the car off the line, but you didn't even have to really try. It was actually really good at it, so that makes it easy. But to get that last little bit, you need to try different techniques, how fast you're going in with the throttle, and whether wheel spin is going to be a problem or early on or not, so that you have to decide how quick you can go to full throttle.
Let's go into the Cayman.
Well, that's another car we were very surprised. Porsche is claiming 4.9 seconds to 60 with that car. Now, the Germans are always conservative. BMW is conservative. Porsche is always very conservative. So we had no expectations, and that's a car we had seen tests on. We had no expectation it would run the numbers that it did to 60. What we discovered right away was that even though Porsche doesn't mention it, and in fact kind of infers that you need to buy a Cayman S to get the launch control, there is a launch control on the base car, or something that emulates it very closely. In fact, it launched so hard and and first gear's short, but it still seemed to think it needed I could tell the clutches were slipping most of the way through first gear. And I was a little bit concerned about damaging the car, particularly when Porsche's saying it doesn't have this system. But it held up to it. It didn't care. It just
finished the test.
Yes, it did. And we ended up getting 4.2 seconds to 60, again with no rollout. So.
7/10 improvement. That's huge.
So that's 7/10 better than Porsche's claiming. So very, right in the mix with the rest of these cars here too. So lots of torque, very strong accelerating car.
Now the M2 had a tendency to spin the tires a lot at the start. We tried it with launch control and without, but it has wheel spin issue, and that's what held it back from being even faster. we got it down to 4.0.
Right.
And that's very fast.
Right, that is, again, without rollout, that's a good number, and that's about, I think that's close to what the magazines are showing with rollout. They're in high threes. I can't remember what Porsche or BMW is claiming, but very strong car, very, that's the thing that stood out the most, that, you know, that's an engine-centric car.
Absolutely. And our quarter mile acceleration test reflected that, where the M2 trap speed, it was 3 miles per hour faster than the Supra.
Right.
So even though the Supra is more powerful than the ratings,
Right.
seems the M2 is also more powerful than its
Yes,
ratings.
exactly. So, in fact, our trap speeds were for all of these cars were much better than we expected. So all three were like that.
I see a car over here. I hear it has 388 miles.
We'll get it broken in.
Exactly.
So thanks again for watching. As you can see, there's a ton of stuff to unpack on the Supra, the M2 Competition, and the 718 Cayman. Lots of exciting stuff to talk about, and if you've ever driven one of these cars, you know about it. If you want to see our testing in action, just look at the links below in the description section. They'll take you there. And we wanted to really thank everybody for the comments we've been receiving on the previous videos we posted. I want you to know that we read everything. Our team reads all those. We're responding in person to everything that you write, reading and thinking about everything that you say. So it's been very helpful. Thanks again, and we'll see you on the next one.